on Snow White and how it totally imploded at the box office this weekend? It was so delicious. The thing they spent $170 million to make the thing, and it had the lowest opening, under $50 million, of any of these live action Disney remakes that they've ever had. Even the one that was their worst, Dumbo, did better than this has done.
A rising actress whose meteoric climb to stardom has taken a drastic turn. Her interviews sparked fierce debates, her social media posts ignited outrage, and the ensuing drama has overshadowed the film itself. From her blunt comments about the original Snow White to her unapologetic political stance, she has become a magnet for controversy, one so powerful that some say it ruined the movie's chances before it even hit theaters. Today, we'll unravel how a beloved classic fell victim to a perfect storm of behind-the-scenes turmoil, misguided marketing, and one actor's outspoken nature, leaving everyone asking, can Disney and Rachel ever recover? For decades, Disney's live-action adaptations have been a goldmine, frequently bringing in hundreds of millions of dollars during their opening weekends. Audiences filled theaters out of curiosity, nostalgia, or a simple love for these animated classics.
I'm a narcissist.
When the studio announced a new Snow White, fans initially expected the kind of box office might they'd seen with Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, or The Lion King. Yet, what actually happened on opening weekend was almost unthinkable. A mere fraction of the revenue that many analysts predicted. Reports placed production costs at an eye-watering figure that soared well above $200 million. That sum included everything from elaborate set pieces to advanced digital technologies and repeated reshoots. The scale was huge, and the studio had bet heavily on reimagining its oldest princess for a modern audience. But by Sunday evening of its opening weekend, it was clear the gamble had backfired in a way few had witnessed before. The film barely mustered enough domestic ticket sales to break the $40 million mark, an opening so small that even Disney's previous worst performers had done better. Comparisons became unavoidable. The Lion King 2019 started with $191 million in its opening weekend, and Beauty and the Beast 2017 earned an astonishing $174 million. Even lesser remakes like Dumbo fared more respectably. Suddenly, industry insiders were dissecting the Snow White catastrophe, from unappealing marketing campaigns to controversies that had built up for months. A growing sense of disbelief surrounded the project.
And to everyone who hates when I win, the winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her. And I can only hope that despite my flaws, and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them, that at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
How could a film with such a rich legacy crash so spectacularly at the box office? What made this even more shocking was that advance buzz for Disney remakes usually guarantees a decent opening. Even if critics aren't impressed, audiences typically show up for the novelty of seeing a childhood classic revamped with live actors and modern CGI wizardry. This time, however, that built-in goodwill seemed to have evaporated. With scathing reviews piling up from critics and casual viewers alike, the already small number of curious moviegoers dwindled rapidly. Something wasn't just off, it was catastrophically broken. And as we peel back the layers, one name consistently emerges as a major factor in the meltdown: Rachel Zegler. The role of Snow White carries a lot of weight. She's historically significant to Disney, as the 1937 animated film changed the course of the entire company. For over 80 years, audiences have cherished her story. This iconic status naturally placed a large spotlight on whomever took the role in the remake. Initially, many were eager to see what a fresh-faced talent like Rachel would bring. She had gained acclaim for previous performances, and her casting suggested a modern spin for a classic character. But then the interviews started.
I mean, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so.
Rachel's remarks about the 1937 film struck many longtime Disney fans as dismissive. She branded the original storyline as outdated, and made it clear that her Snow White would bear no resemblance to the demure princess who sang into a wishing well. Instead of emphasizing her excitement to update a beloved character, Rachel seemed to go on the offensive. In more than one interview, she reiterated that the traditional love story wasn't the main focus this time around. It might have been a standard marketing line, "We're telling a more empowering story." But fans quickly felt she wasn't just offering a modern perspective. She was also ridiculing the film's original charm. The drama soared to new heights when Rachel, in a burst of candor, described the prince from the classic film as a weird stalker. While some viewers might see the original movie's romance as simplistic or naive, labeling it in such extreme terms felt needlessly provocative. These statements reverberated across social media, where both Disney loyalists and casual onlookers expressed dismay. Critics argued that Rachel showed little respect for the very material that defined her character. It was one thing to modernize Snow White. It was another to belittle the source that paved the way for everything Disney stands for.
There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
The backlash turned relentless. Veteran Disney fans, casual viewers, and even people who hadn't planned on seeing the remake found themselves united in distaste for Rachel's dismissive tone. In a move to smooth things over, she tried clarifying that she'd been misunderstood. Interviews with major entertainment outlets included statements suggesting that her jokes had been taken out of context. However, these half-hearted attempts at damage control often fell flat. Critics felt she was simply doubling down on her original remarks while framing them in more palatable language. Public sentiment continued to sour, and her name became a lightning rod for debate. In the lead-up to the film's release, Disney attempted to present Rachel as the bright, talented new face of the modern princess. Press junkets were lined up, carefully edited promotional spots were prepared, and Rachel's publicists crafted talking points to reframe her remarks. But even the most well-oiled PR machine can't overcome relentless waves of controversy if the celebrity at its center keeps generating fresh scandals. Beyond her critiques of classic Disney storytelling, Rachel waded into political territory by publicly lambasting high-profile figures. She posted on social media calling out certain groups and leaders, fueling an entire subset of fans and critics to lash back.
A lot of people will assume it's a love story just because, we cast a guy in the movie. Right. Andrew Burnap, great dude. Yep.
In one particularly inflammatory post, she seemingly wished unrest upon supporters of a major political figure. Given the heated political climate, her comments erupted into a firestorm almost instantly. Thousands of individuals, outraged by her statements, called for a boycott of Snow White. With controversy swirling, executives scrambled. There were half apologies and carefully worded public statements intended to calm the most furious critics. Rachel herself posted a lengthy message about letting her emotions get the best of her. But the public was not convinced. To many, the apologies seemed forced, the timing too suspicious, and the sincerity non-existent. The idea that Disney had a star insulting entire swathes of the population was seen as a colossal PR disaster. It certainly didn't help that many fans saw those repeated clarifications as nothing more than last-ditch attempts to rescue a film already in deep trouble.
The reason we had Rachel Zegler on the docket is so she came out and took a large dump on half of the country.
Tension escalated further as major promotional events drew near. Disney found itself weighing just how prominently it should feature Rachel in interviews and social media campaigns. On the one hand, she was the star of the movie, front and center in any promotional material. On the other, every time she spoke up, the film's image seemed to sink lower. Whispers of damage control circulated, with insiders claiming that Disney was struggling to find a coherent strategy. The studio could hardly sideline the lead actress of a major motion picture. Still, the extent of negative public sentiment was almost impossible to ignore. And through it all, Rachel's public persona kept making headlines for the wrong reasons, setting the stage for an even bigger meltdown upon release. Long before the marketing fiascos and social media storms, the Snow White remake had already endured a rocky production. An actor strike halted progress at a crucial point, pushing filming schedules into disarray. Then came the global health crisis, which disrupted nearly every project in Hollywood and forced entire teams into quarantine protocols. Additional calamities, like a fire on set, only added more delays and panic. Each time production rallied, another obstacle appeared, chipping away at the film's momentum. Rumors abounded about the strained atmosphere on set, while some early glimpses of cast camaraderie surfaced on Instagram.
So I attacked her, and then she came out and she said, I apologize. I went too far, but it wasn't sincere.
Insiders reported underlying tension, particularly surrounding Rachel's influence. She was the film's lead, and in typical big-budget fashion, leads often hold significant sway. Her outspoken nature, especially when discussing creative decisions, allegedly ruffled feathers among crew members. Whispers emerged that she questioned script elements and insisted on editorial changes that aligned with her modern interpretation of Snow White, even if it conflicted with the project's initial direction. If any of these rumors hold weight, it would mean that friction simmered for months, long before the first official trailer even dropped. One of the most telling accounts came from Martin Kleba, who lent his talents to portray Grumpy in this production. In an interview, he voiced disappointment that the entire premiere event had been dialed down drastically. Instead of the typical glittering Hollywood celebration, the film's big night was limited to a basic screening at the El Capitan Theater. No major press lines, no large-scale festivities, just a subdued gathering. Kleba attributed much of this to the controversy swirling around Rachel, suggesting Disney had chosen a quieter path to avoid an avalanche of negative press. While he stopped short of outright blaming her alone, the message was clear. The uproar around Rachel's interviews and social media posts had overshadowed the team's hard work, forcing the studio into a defensive crouch. Such a move is nearly unprecedented for a major Disney release, especially for a film with so much historical significance. Typically, the studio spares no expense in celebrating any new iteration of its original princess. Movie premieres become spectacles, replete with big-name attendees, red carpet interviews, and elaborate tributes to Disney legacy. Yet the reimagined Snow White found itself ducking the fanfare. This was the clearest sign yet that the negative buzz was so intense, not even Disney wanted to chance a face-off with the press. Meanwhile, the rest of the cast, crew, and countless behind-the-scenes professionals were left in the lurch, robbed of a proper moment to shine. With the film finally hitting theaters, audiences were no longer relying on interviews or rumors. They could judge the final product for themselves. Unfortunately for Disney, many who saw it were quick to share brutal opinions. Viewers called the new storyline unrecognizable, lamenting how the classic charm and timeless romance had been sacrificed in the name of an update that felt hollow. Critics likewise seemed unimpressed, with some describing the film as half-baked and incoherent. Then there were the official ratings. The movie stumbled with shockingly low numbers on both Rotten Tomatoes and CinemaScore. For Disney, a negative audience score hits the hardest. It signals that everyday viewers weren't just unimpressed. Many outright disliked the movie. Social media piled on. The negativity that had dogged the film before release swelled into a tsunami of critical tweets, YouTube commentaries, and viral TikTok rants. Some fans posted side-by-side comparisons of scenes from the 1937 classic and their 2020's counterpart, highlighting how much of the original's warmth and whimsy had vanished. Others zeroed in on Rachel's performance, calling it stiff and overshadowed by her own out-of-character remarks in real life. Even folks who might have been open to a new take felt that the entire experience was marred by months of off-putting discourse. For the second weekend, ticket sales dropped sharply. When the dust settled on the global box office, the numbers confirmed what many suspected. It was a genuine flop. Worse still, it was competing with a swirl of negative headlines that made prospective audiences steer clear. People who hadn't even considered seeing it read the controversies, watched clips of Rachel's interviews, and thought, "This isn't for me." Even casual Disney fans decided to pass, preferring to revisit older classics or wait for the film to hit streaming instead of heading to the multiplex. The meltdown was complete. The conversation soon shifted from what happened to Snow White to what's going to happen to Rachel. In the months prior, she had been positioned as a major rising star, landing big-budget roles and topping many new A-lister lists. Yet the fiasco surrounding Snow White changed that narrative. Whispers circulated around Hollywood that she had become too risky for large-scale family-friendly projects. Studios might still admire her acting talent, but the baggage of relentless controversies could outweigh potential box office gain. Inside circles, it's rumored that Disney, under heavy losses from this film, is hesitant to feature her prominently again. Executives were allegedly stunned by the magnitude of backlash, realizing that no matter how they spun the marketing, controversies overshadowed everything else. Some critics say the meltdown wasn't solely her doing. Production issues, miscalculated scripts, and questionable marketing all share the blame. However, Rachel's repeated interviews, dismissive comments about a Disney classic, and political outbursts formed a perfect storm that hammered the film's prospects. Other insiders claim that even beyond Disney, other studios are wary. One or two social media missteps can be forgiven, but the Snow White saga involved multiple controversies in a very short span. Apologies were issued, only to be contradicted by new statements or older, unearthed remarks. This pattern of flaring up controversies, backtracking, then igniting new ones doesn't typically endear an actor to risk-averse executives who prefer stable, controversy-free stars for multi-million-dollar ventures. Casting an actor with a proven track record of stirring the pot, intentionally or not, can send sponsors, distributors, and brand partners running in the other direction. As the dust settles, Rachel finds herself in a predicament few would envy. If she remains defiant, critics will say she's learned nothing. If she tries a full rebrand, she risks accusations of inauthenticity. She's caught between being true to her outspoken personality and rehabilitating her image enough to sustain a long-term Hollywood career. Only time will tell how she navigates this balancing act, but the path forward promises to be complicated and fraught with even more scrutiny. Few would have predicted that a reimagining of Disney's very first animated classic would become one of the most polarizing releases in modern cinematic history. Yet here we are, watching a studio known for its invincible brand endure a humbling box office failure. The Meltdown is a cautionary tale of what happens when a volatile mix of controversies, production woes, and star-driven drama converge on a single project. Snow White was supposed to be a sure thing, an old favorite revived for new audiences. Instead, it's a stark example of how quickly fan goodwill can evaporate. In the aftermath, the question lingers. Can Rachel's glare bounce back, or will this fiasco follow her for years to come? Hollywood loves a redemption story, but it's equally capable of turning its back on those perceived as too volatile. This Snow White saga will undoubtedly remain a hot topic for some time. Perhaps it marks a pivotal shift in how studios approach treasured IP, or maybe it's a temporary stumble from which Disney will learn valuable lessons. Either way, the story isn't over, and the repercussions are far from settled. As viewers and fans, we can only watch and wonder whether Rachel's abrupt downfall is permanent, or if she'll emerge from the shadows, newly humbled and ready to reclaim the spotlight.